Pray that you will open hearts, open minds for your glory, Lord, in Jesus' name. So I've been given 10 minutes, so my aim is to stay on 10 minutes. Okay. So growing up for me was not very nice, and for my mum, it was nothing more than a struggle. I can remember we lived in a 2-bedroom terrace house. We had a toilet outside in the shed. We didn't have a bathroom. We had a shower in my room. What I can remember of my dad is 3 things. He was a Cockney, he was a heroin addict, and my mum fell for him after he got out of rehab. From what I've been told, it came to the point of where he was injecting that much into his body that his feet had swollen up like balloons. And I came crawling across the floor when I was maybe 1 or 2, and I accidentally crawled on his foot and he threw me across the room. So my mum, she had a son. She had a boyfriend that was a heroin addict. What was she going to do? So she chose it to go alone. For my mum, that was hard, living on a 1-parent benefit. My mum used to do things. She used to shoplift. She wasn't an alcoholic. She wasn't addicted to drugs. She did what she did to put food on the table and clothes on the back. And for that, I'll always respect her for. I can remember times of waking up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and my mum not being there. She would be in the Chinese washing the pots. I can remember many times coming back from school and I wouldn't be allowed to go to the house because my mum was washing pots at a homeless place and I would have to play in the park until she finished. There was a lot of lonely times. There was a lot of rejection. My mum wasn't very maternal. There was a lot of abuse. What came from a childhood, men come and went. No one really wanted to commit to a little snotty kid. But then all of a sudden that changed. You see, Mr. Right came along. My mum was so happy, someone that loved my mum for who she was, and he used to look after me and used to take me football and doing all the stuff what, dads and sons used to do. And for a while, life was great. And then came the time of when we went to Cornwall for a holiday, and I can remember being in the swimming pool all the time. And one day I came back from the swimming pool, and I came to the chalet, and there was pots and pans flying about all over the place. And I can remember my mum screaming at him, saying, tell him why you're leaving. And within that, he just looked at me and ran out the chalet. I got the blame. I was the bad child. I was the reason why he was leaving and all that sort of stuff. And from then, my mum went on to a rebound, got with someone half her age, and he was nothing but a waste of space. He abused my mum, used her for her money, and wasn't very nice to me. And within that, I was sick of my life. I'd not had no proper upbringing. I'd not had no love in my life, no father figure. And I can remember going to school and I couldn't study. My head was all over the place and I was getting in trouble with the teachers and all that sort of stuff. And I started getting involved with the wrong crowd. I started hanging around with these kids what used to go around bullying people. And eventually we used to go shoplifting. At first it just started off with Parker pens, that sort of stuff. And then, things escalated like sin does. It then led to shoplifting and all this sort of stuff. And then I got involved in cannabis. And this cannabis, it's totally destructive, but at the time, it did something within me what blocked all the pain and all the emotion that was happening in my life. And I looked towards these kids and I felt accepted. So I threw myself in it. It was if any of you have ever seen the film Fagin, that's how it was. One of my friends, his dad was a criminal, and we would go and take everything to him, and he basically would use us as manipulators, and that's how my life was. I became a career criminal. From the age of 15 to 33, I spent 11 years in prison. It's not something what I'm proud of, it's something that I'm ashamed of, but I became institutionalized. I became, my way of life was crime, drugs, and prison. I'd accepted the life for what I was, and through that lifestyle, I became more addicted to more drugs. By the age of 14, I was injecting amphetamine. And then it led on to heroin and crack cocaine. And then my life just totally plummeted. I've overdosed 3 times, been left for dead. Done many things that I'm not proud of. I don't want to go into this because this is not what I want to talk about. But that lifestyle came to a dramatic end. I ended up getting 6 years for an armed robbery. And here I was, 21 years old, doing a 6-year sentence. And I took a look at my life and it was just a whole load of waste of time. I'd been told about this life that it was Ferraris, mansions, cars, respect and all this sort of stuff. Yet realistically it caused me nothing but suffering and pain. And I can remember looking up at the light in the prison cell, thinking about ending it. And I just thought, no, I can change this. So I tried everything within myself to change me. I tried doing ETS program, weighing up the pros and cons within my decision making. I went to victim awareness courses. I did drug treatment programs where looking at addiction and all that sort of stuff. And it came to the time of where I come for parole, and then I got knocked back. And my personal officer, he says, Chaz, I've seen something in you, so I'm going to send you to DCAT. So I thought, great, here's my chance to get a job, sort my life out, you know, all that sort of stuff. So I went off to DCAT, and within that came more freedom, and once again came more drugs. Here I was back in this same lifestyle. And I can remember being sat on the bed thinking, why am I like this? Why can't I change my life? And at that moment, I heard a voice. This is what you are. This is all you're ever going to be. And within that, I ran across this field. I ended up in someone's garage, and I stole a car. And I'm driving to Newark. You know, and I've got it on my mind. I'm just going to do one big last job, and I'm going to hit it right, and just to hell with it. But I thank the Lord, he had another plan. You see, I had it on my heart to go and see my ex-partner. We'd split up through getting a 6-year sentence, but just before the 6-year sentence, she'd become pregnant. Now, this person, I knew her very well. You know, we used to do crimes together. She used to bring me drugs in prison. So when I came to the door, she started screaming and shouting at me and all this and that, and then eventually she let me in the house. We started talking, and she said, listen, Chaz, I've got something to tell you. I said, okay. She said, I've become a Christian. Now, I know this girl, and at first I started to mock her. I started to say, listen, if there's a God, then why is the world like it is? Why is there so much suffering? Why is there so much pain? But she didn't have the answer. She'd only been going to church for a long time. But something what she did say shook me to the core. She said, listen, I was in church today, and I heard a story about the wise and the foolish builder. And she said, right now, you're being the foolish builder. You're trying to build your life upon the sand, which is drugs, women, and crime, and all that sort of stuff. She says, but the wise builder is the person that built his house upon the rock, which is Jesus. And she said, listen, Jesus is real. God loves you, and God knows that you've got a lot of hurting and a lot of pain in your life. But if you will accept him, if you will ask him into your heart, then he will change your life. You know, right there and then, that night, she went to bed and she left me on the city, and I wrestled with what she said. You know, I started to think about what the scientists say, you know, and what they used to teach at school, that we've evolved through this big bang, that atoms and molecules have formed us together, and this is why we are. Well, I don't buy that, because we've got emotion and we love and we have feelings and all this sort of stuff. And then I thought about, you know, that we've evolved from monkeys. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not a monkey, and yous are a lot better than that, and so am I. So that threw that one out the equation, and the last one left God. And what about if God is real? And what about if he can change my life? So within that, the next morning, I woke up and I said, Sasha, listen, phone the police. I'm handing myself in. She said, what? I said, phone the police. So the police came to the door, and he's looking at me, scratching my head. He knows me very well. He's saying, look, Chaz, there's not going to be no trouble here, is there? And I said, no. And put my hands out to him, put the handcuffs on. I went to the police car. He took me to Lincoln Prison. And, you know, as I went to Lincoln Prison, I thought, you know, I'll put my name down for chapel. I've been there a few other times, you know, for other reasons. But this time I'm going to go for the right reason. And I can remember walking up them steps, and as soon as I walked up the steps, something within me snapped. A wave of emotion came over me, and I started to not cry, but sob. And I couldn't understand this, because I had not done this for a long time. There was about 30 or 40 people sat there who I know very well, and they were all like, what's wrong with Chaz? And I'm just constantly sobbing. And as the choir started to sing the hymns, I started to sob uncontrollably a lot more. And this man stood up and he says, I've got a message for someone today. And this message God gave me on the way up to the prison. He's told me to tell you, if you will surrender and pray to him, then he will change your life. You know, within this guy came over to me. He said, listen, son, do you want all your suffering and pain to end? I said, I'm full of it. He said, that doesn't matter. God can change that. He says, say this prayer after me. So I said this prayer. I didn't see no big bang. I didn't see no flashing lights, but I knew something had changed within my heart. You know, and I went back to my prison cell, and I'd heard about the Bible, that God could speak to you through it, and God did speak to me through it. He spoke to me through Psalm 66, verse 17 to 19, and it says this, I cried out to the Lord. His praise was on my tongue. If I had cherished sin in my heart, the Lord would not have listened, but the Lord has surely listened and not forsaken me. Now, I wish I could give you a testimony from that point that it was plain sailing, and from that moment on, I totally surrendered and everything was fine and dandy. But realistically, it wasn't. For 6 years, it was nothing but pain and suffering. I ended up doing another 4-year sentence. I kept going back to what I know. I had to go to 2 rehabs, one for 11 and a half months and one for 9 months. You see, the thing within my family was that there was a generational curse, and I've only found out since my dad died that his brother was an addict, his uncle was an addict, and his dad was an addict. You see, addiction is powerful, but our God is stronger. And it came to the point of where I was in prison, and once again, I was broken. I tried cutting my wrists. I tried ending my life. And I'm in my prison cell, and I'm thinking, God, I have heard the promises that you have spoken over me. I know that they are true, but God, I can't break away from this addiction. And I'm on my knees crying my eyes out, and I heard this voice say, son, there is a time coming when you will become on fire for me, where you will be married, where you will be in ministry, but you have to surrender. Within the next couple of days, I'm in my prison cell and I'm reading my Bible, and God spoke to me through His word, and it was in where it says to Abraham in Genesis, leave your father's house and go to a land that I will show you. You see, I kept going back to Newark. I kept going back to the familiar, and God was calling me out of that and into something new. So that day I went onto association, and I was in this relationship. She was on drugs, she worked, but it was my little comfort blanket. And I phoned her up. I said, listen, this is it. I'm not coming back no more. I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm not coming back because I want more than this lifestyle. I put the phone down. I went back to my cell. A week after that, the pastor came to the prison cell and he said, do you know someone called Lawson? He says he knows you, and he's told me to tell you if you're ready to change your life, then he has a plan for you where you might be able to work out. Within that, I jumped at it. I came to the Lighthouse in Rotherham. That was 3.5 years ago. I'd never had a job in my life. 8 years of my son's life I spent behind prison. Since I came to the Lighthouse and surrendered to God, God has given me a job. Not just any job, but a job of where I have an influence in people's lives where they've been through the same sort of stuff of what I've been. In that 3.5 years, God has restored the years that the locusts have eaten dramatically. I'm now married. I have a beautiful wife. I'm a senior support worker. I go into schools sharing my testimony of what God has done in my life. I get to preach in my local church. I've done amazing things for God. When you surrender your life and open up your life to God, God will use you in dramatic ways. Thank you for listening.
Chaz, that was awesome. I always love hearing your story.